Good afternoon. My name is Jim Conlan, and welcome to the latest episode of our entertainment show. As you know, in part 3 each week, we like to premiere a special type of series called Into the Vault series, where we look at iconic movies or TV series that have left their mark in terms of the TV and entertainment industry. So whether it's a 60s Western, maybe it's a 70s romantic stories, maybe it's an 80s police detective show, maybe it's a 2000s horror, or maybe a 2020 futuristic thriller. For the last few weeks now, we've been particularly talking about US movies and US TV series. We're coming back closer to home now this week, and we're coming at British production in terms of about a Greek mythology city, Atlantis. It was shot between 2013 to 2015, 26 episodes in total, very sort of prestigious. It was a great shock to many when it didn't get retained for season 3. And some of its cast members included Addy, who played Hercules, Jack Donnelly, who played Jason, Robert Emms, who played Pythagoras, Aiysha Hart, who played Ariadne, Parish, who played Pasiphae, Juliet Stevenson, who played the Oracle, and our special guest this evening, Jemima Rooper, who played the one and only, the fantastic character Medusa. And if you all know about Greek mythology, Medusa is the woman, I say, Jemima, had you more than 8 snakes on your head at some stage in terms of that? At one stage I looked at it and I thought there must be 20 snakes in this sort of headpiece anyway.
I didn't get any snakes when we shot it. I had this quite amazing prosthetic skull cap that all my hair was underneath, and it was like a bald cap, but which you don't see in the show, but they had sculpted amazing kind of snake scales on this bald head. And
was it quite heavy?
No, it wasn't. No, it was sort of like a second skin, and it would sort of fit into like my eye sockets, and it was just sort of blended in. You kind of couldn't tell, you couldn't see the edges, and then the CGI guys animated the snakes on top of it like afterwards. So it was sort of nothing to do with me, and I was kind of sad that you didn't get to see how amazing the skull cap looked.
Yeah, and in terms of Jemima, in terms of auditioning for this process, when you heard about a British production taking on a TV series like Atlantis with sort of Greek mythology and all this sort of storylines, what was your sort of initial take? Were you thinking that that's a bit daunting in terms of taking on some sort of TV series? What's it going to be like? Is it going to be adult team like Spartacus, or is it going to have a sort of a future sort of humor sort of take to it?
Well, I actually kind of cheated because I'd worked with the creators of the show a lot before. I think this might have been like my 4th or 5th project with them. And I started working with two of the creators, Julian Murphy and Johnny Caps, who I'd worked with since I was 18, I think. I did a TV show called As If for Channel 4, which was quite pioneering in its time, and was part of T4 when Channel 4 first launched that. They were always coming up, and then I did another series called Hex for Sky One, which was again kind of, I think a bit before its time in terms of what it was delivering. And they were always sort of thinking out of the box a bit, and they always had really good ideas, and they always kind of trod this line between humor and tragedy, and they always had very vivid characters. They always like great roles that I got to play with them. And I didn't know anything about the project, and I suddenly just got sent it and was just offered the part. And I think I, in my head, assumed that I knew exactly why I'd been offered the part and what I would do with it. And I remember getting the script and going, oh, this isn't at all what I thought, because she's a lovely girl in the show. And what happens to her isn't the sort of story that everyone's familiar with. And but I really like that. They are also just like the most fun people to work for. It's a real family, and consequently, me and all the boys, and in fact everyone that was working together, we were really good friends. We all got on extremely well and had a good time, and that sort of comes from the top, I think.
And Jemima, did you like that sort of gag when you saw the storyline of putting Hercules and Medusa to sort together? I suppose two opposites in terms of Greek mythology, in terms of a love interest, in terms of Hercules, who's probably seen in Greek mythology as a bronze god, in terms of a man whose strength of 10 men in terms of that, and Medusa then is seen as person that's the most fearful in terms of the world, in terms of which they have that gag of Hercules not being Hercules, being anything but Hercules, and Medusa being more ordinary than what Medusa is really. So
yes, well, that's sort of what I loved about it. I remember actually being pretty jealous that I couldn't be Hercules because I thought that was the best role, and I was just like, oh, it's so brilliant, it's so funny. Mark is, well, you know, exceptional. It was amazing to work with, and is brilliant in the part, and it was so lovely. But that's, you know, that's what I loved about it. That's what I hope the people watching it loved about it, is that it's sort of, yeah, nothing was quite what you expected, and that's always more interesting.
And Jemima, in terms of these sort of scenes, we were going through a bit of a Greek, and then you went through a bit of a Roman phase with the whole gladiator sort of Colosseum sort of stuff like that, in terms of that, and how you were sort of portrayed as maybe a slave girl of Pasiphae's palace that was working sort of in the king. You're working in Adriana's sort of palace, in terms of the king sort of there, in terms of that sort of role there. How did you see that sort of character? Did you see her as a common sort of peasant who sort of was living out the sort of normal sort of life, and maybe was thrown into this sort of world where she met these three guys, and basically she found herself being sort of cunning to their will, dare I say, in terms of what they asked, she normally sort of gave in, maybe, and sometimes did it at her own risk, in terms of that.
Yeah, I think that the sort of thing about Medusa in the series is that, yeah, she just starts out, she's a sort of every woman, and she's definitely sort of maybe got more to her than she's ever been allowed to show or feel or do, and then on meeting the other characters, she's sort of her best self for a while, and falling in love with Hercules, she's kind of her best self for a while, but then it all goes very wrong. But she's a very loyal person, and so she ends up sort of sacrificing herself many times over, if I remember correctly, for her friends, and for her love, which is kind of a tragic figure, as opposed to the monster that we all think she is.
And as an actress going through, obviously you knew the story of Medusa, so obviously we're going through episode 1 and episode 2 and episode 3. Were you thinking to yourself each week when the script came out, you do it, is this going to be the week now that sort of happens, or I'm going to be in that sort of storyline where it all, where my new sort of future is going to be found out? And when you actually finally shot the episode where it did happen, where you opened that box, were you sort of excited that sort of week, in terms of that sort of filming that episode? Was it exciting, or were you sort of bit, maybe, oh, I would have liked to have gone maybe another 1 or 2 episodes with this sort of character?
No, I think I was really ready when that storyline happened. Like, there was a real, like, come on, let's do this. It was really fun, because it was like the more meaty stuff to play, and I felt like there was quite a build up, because it was like, how was it going to happen? And yeah, we were waiting for those later scripts to come out. We didn't really know exactly how things were going to happen, and it was pretty exciting. I liked it. I remember reading the first script and thinking, oh yeah, I know, Medusa, she's going to be the villain. I'm going to be the villain. I was really like, oh, I'm making bread. I'm really nice. But I loved it, and I loved the journey. that the character went on. It was brilliant.
And Jim and I, in terms of Atlantis as well, when you found out the news that there wouldn't be a sort of season 3, and Mark told me that the directors and producers had a 5-season arc actually in terms of Atlantis, that they had another 3 seasons and they had another sort of more characters that they wanted to introduce, and they'd actually give hints towards the end of the season 2 of where they were going with sort of season 3 as well. Did it come as I know the industry is so unpredictable, you just never know. But did it come as a massive surprise to ye as well? Because obviously ye were shooting your prelude to season 3 really towards the end of the season 2 finish.
Well, I wasn't actually, Jim. I'd been killed off properly, finally. So I didn't care what happened. I was like, fine, I'm gone. No, I was a bit surprised. But it was a very ambitious show, and there was a really like healthy budget. Like it felt like the money was being really well spent. Like they were getting amazing people in, get the brilliant actors guesting or regulars, and the sets were amazing, and it felt like it was kind of competing with the American system a little bit, and hence sort of knowing that there were 5 seasons that could play out, and it was sort of frustrating and a shame that they didn't get to do everything that they wanted to do with it. But yes, it happens.
Yeah,
a lot.
And Jim and I, in terms of your own characters, sort of death scene, and we see those iconic image of Jason coming out with your head, sort of guillotine, sort of take the decapitation, sort of take in that, and obviously that's a sculptured sort of piece, but you obviously he goes in terms of that sort of killing of yours. There's a bit of dialogue between you, but we don't actually see the gory sort of finale for Medusa as well. Was that the way you liked? Did you like to have played it out? Would you have liked there to be have been a bit of a struggle or a bit of resistance, or for her to have a sudden change of heart, dare I say?
That's really interesting. No, I don't think so. I think it felt I mean, I would have liked that if I'd got to stay in the show. If the show had gone on, then yeah. But I thought it was like a brilliant storyline, because it's I mean, it's so complex emotionally, and like what it is for Jack's character to have to do that, but then it is this sort of iconic moment, and it's brilliant. So I love the way they did it, and I love that you don't actually see it. I mean, it was you know, as much a family show as it could be as well, and often it's kind of, you know, it's the things you don't see that you just have in your imagination are often kind of better than when you actually do see it. So
and Jim and I know it's a busy time for you as well in terms of projects in the works, in terms of the pipeline. Have you anything coming our way here in Ireland that we can see on our TV screens in the near future?
Well, I have at the moment a horror movie on Disney Plus called Matriarch, which is a sort of a lovely kind of, you know, British independent, low budget kind of folk horror, and kind of a bit of body gore horror as well. And it's quite an interesting little piece, and a series I think that's on Paramount Plus called Flowers in the Attic: The Origin, which is based on some American novels, and it's kind of an origin story about this kind of very crazy old lady that I play. And I think I'm going to be filming a project, a TV project for Channel 5 in Kilkenny by the end of this month. So
okay, you're coming to Kilkenny in County Ireland, so
yeah. Yes, I am. I don't know anything more than Kilkenny.
Quite town Kilkenny. It's a quite enough sort of town, Kilkenny. Yeah. You spend a day there and you'll know from the top of it to the bottom of it fairly well. I know that's for sure. I know. I'd say probably it's probably a sitting room compared to what London is like anyway. That's
That'd be nice.
Yeah. So you'll be indulged in Kilkenny. You'll know it all anyway by the time you've finished up there. Jim and I, in terms of last two questions, I'll ask these to Mark as well. Let's say a funny sort of story. Let's pretend mythologically that you were walking down the street, and let's pretend Medusa, your own character, was walking against you, and you were asked, basically, having played that role, how would you describe her as a character? What would you be your take on Medusa that you played in Atlantis?
I get like just one of the sort of kindest, sweetest, most loyal people you could ever meet. Like true of heart, I think I would describe her. But not like we were behind the scenes, like none of us are like our characters at all. There were a lot of very funny things that happened when the cameras were not rolling.
That's going to be my final question for you now. So we'll jump onto that. I asked Mark Addy, and he had a funny story to tell me about Jack and Michael Ball sort of gag, the sort of running gag. And so I'm just going to ask you now, have you any sort of particular story or unique take in between sets or between actors or stuff like that that makes you still laugh, that's unique to you to this day, that you still remember from your time on Atlantis?
Yes, I think he'll absolutely murder me for telling anyone this. During the first series, we were in Morocco filming. I was only there for a couple of days, and they were there for longer. But it was Robert Emms who plays Pythagoras' birthday, and I gave him a book that is called Penis Pokey. And it's like a picture book, but there's a hole to put. And we had I think it was our first night there, we'd had a few drinks, and he did the book. And he thought that no one could see, but he was right next to like most of the rest of the crew from our show, who just watched him drunkenly put his willy in a book.
Wow.
I shouldn't have told you that story. Sorry, Robert.
Sort of a bombshell. Yeah, you've left me speechless there. A bombshell to start to finish. Jemima Rooper, an absolute pleasure talking to you there today to relive your memories of playing Medusa in Atlantis from 2013 to 2015, 26 episodes in total. Such a smash hit TV series, and no doubt if there was a future movie in the works, you'll be the first one to be called to replay your role. But for the moment, Jemima Rooper, stay safe, take care, and God bless.
Thank you.